What's good, everyone? It's Marcanum X. Tonight I'm going to be answering some questions that my man Alex from the Underground Vault had for me. Mad respect to him. Big shout out to him and his channel and what he does. The first question has to do with my favorite intros, my favorite skits, interludes, and outros of all time. The second question has to deal with ideal album length. And the third question has to deal with albums I would modify or make better through changes. So the first question I'm going to answer, and well, all these questions I'm going to answer related to hip-hop rather than just music in general. Although the first question, I do incorporate a little bit of alternative in there, but it's more related to hip-hop than anything. So all these questions will be hip-hop based. Okay, so the first one, and again, these are not in any specific order. I just, these ones really stuck out to me out of all the records I've listened to. And mind you, I've listened to a lot of hip-hop records. I've heard a lot of people, even if they think I haven't heard these artists before, or whatever, I've heard a lot of hip-hop, and I'll tell you what, there's a lot of good stuff out there, and at the same time there's not, but I'm going to focus more on the good stuff because there's a lot of good stuff out there. So okay, so the first one, this is a no-brainer for me. You can go to my Facebook photos and you can check out about half a year ago or so when I released my album. I talked about my top 25 hip-hop records of all time. Now, of course, looking back on it, I think I missed a couple of records, but in the end, I have no regrets. But this right here is a no-brainer. The interludes, as far as like the intros and interludes, you name it, from the Jedi Mind Tricks records, Violent by Design, all the way up to A History of Violence, like those intros and interludes and outros are so incredible. Like, you guys have to give it up to Stoop, man. And in my honest opinion, I think Stoop's interlude beats are just those alone are better than most producers' catalogs. I'm gonna say that right now because I really mean that. Because the way that Scott Stallone, Jedi Mind Tricks official engineer, the way that he mixed all that made that sound so incredible, and the way that they constructed that. And one thing I really look for in interludes is that they're cinematic, that they're unique, and they're not necessarily funny, but they're more, they got the flavor to it. They really stand out. They really give the album more, they make it more listenable, and it makes it more like a movie rather than just a, typical album to pop in your CD player in your car or something, or on your iPod or whatever. It really adds that cinematic flavor to your album, and it really makes it stand out. That's why Violent by Design all the way up to A History of Violence was really dope. And even their first album, Psychosocial, was phenomenal. The second one, The Warning by Pharoah Monch. It was off of his last record, We Are Renegades War. It talked about like how that, and also the interludes from that. That was like really cool, and some of the stuff that he put in there was really amazing. It's kind of like taking place in the future, and they had all this stuff going on, and it just really fit the concept of war, renegades and revolution and all that other stuff. Really dope. And also my fam, Dangerous, his album. Now, here's a fun fact for you. I am the first person that ever bought Forgotten Language. This was like 4 or 5 years ago, something like that, before my mission. And the intro and outro on Forgotten Language, that's really unique because the intro talks about how they have, how hip hop, it seems like a lot of it's lost and people are, really lost, and the art of emceeing has really become such a foreign, ancient art to people, and how it's trying to come back and rebuild. But it seems like most people aren't used to that because they're so used to mainstream hip-hop and not some kind of like stuff that's now known as an esoteric vibe, when really back in the 90s it wasn't like that at all. So, and then the outro really ties into the intro, with the MC and his journey, and I'd have to listen to it again, but it was really dope. And this next one is definitely a no-brainer. One of the greatest MCs of all time, like hands down, Kool G Rap and DJ Polo. The intro from Live and Let Die, the very first record they did, it had the Godfather music in the background, really that mafioso vibe, and it really, Kool G Rap really invented gangster rap. You hear about all these guys like Tupac and da-da-da-da-da. At the same time, I'm gonna state this, you know, Cool G Rap invented gangster rap. And if you think that I'm lying, you go back and listen to his records. And that intro right there really sets the tone for Live and Let Die. Also for other records like 4, 5, 6, which in my opinion is one of the, if not the greatest record of all time. And to me, it's the greatest record of all time from the golden age of hip hop. Let's see. I mentioned earlier about alternative hip hop that, now this ties in with Stoop. I don't know if anybody's checked this out. Now that he's had a fallout with Jedi Mind Tricks, he's been doing some alternative side projects. Now I know he's got a hip hop project coming out with Superstition in the future called The Inanimate Life or something like that. It should be really dope. But these were, let's see, Dutch and Vespertina. And those had some really cool vibes on it. You know, it had the Jedi Mind type of style, but with, I think it was Lori DeRiza for Vespertina and Liz Fullerton for Dutch. So, and on Vespertina, you had the interludes, and it really made the album just flow cinematically. You know, I just really, I listen to those albums all the time. You know, even in my car, just wherever, because, you know, the way that they were mixed and the way that it makes the album just flow so smoothly. Now this one, again, this is just very recent, but this is one of my favorite, you know, I just love the beat. You know, my homie Verbal, you know, he made this beat, and then what happens is, my dudes, the Scratchaholics, you got DJ TMB, Trickalone, and Mad Hands, they all, the Scratchaholics, they all did cuts on this intro. This is called Spintro, and it was on Dane's album, The Underworld. And so you had like all these cut samples, you know, it had like Big L on it and Jadakiss and Eminem, you know, scratch samples. And like they would all do their unique stuff, and it was on a triplet set beat. And it was really just an interesting vibe. It had an interesting name, very unique. It's definitely one of my favorite intros of all time, as recent as it is. Two other ones, and now I don't really focus on outros too much for album, you know, it doesn't really faze me, but these two really caught my attention. And one of them was Styles of Beyond, on their album 2000 Fold, really dope album. The outro for that had a lot of flavor, like so unique, I've never heard an outro like it. The outro went something like Style Beyond, Style Beyond. You had someone saying that, and then all of a sudden you'd hear this guy and he talk about the MCs are encouraged to be unique and everything. And then you have a woman's voice, and both of them sound robotic, but you had a woman's voice, and she was saying, oh, well, you know, only skills get you so far until you have to like go in the industry, you know, something along that line. But then what they did was they kind of incorporated that, and then they incorporate that with their group name, Styles of Beyond. So they would have their dialogue, and then it goes Style Beyond again. So I thought that was really dope how they just trying to encourage uniqueness, and they did it with their name by playing it over and over again to indoctrinate their name and their style into people's brains when they were listening to it, especially after they just listened to a whole 20 or so track record. So I thought that was great. And last but not least for this one is the outro on Spit by Supernatural. He talks about, you know, how he was reading a dictionary. You know, he took vocal samples and put it over a beat. You know, how he'd read a dictionary and how he would just make up rhymes as he goes, which is really a deep inspiration for me personally. As most of you know, I'm a freestyler. You know, you have other people acknowledging him and co-signing Supernatural on that same thing. You know, just making up words as he goes. You know, giving him any words, and like just all the stuff that really is an accommodation towards Supernatural's legacy. And I thought that was really cool, especially for this album that he did. And this came out about, I don't know if it was like 5, 6, maybe even 7 or 8 years ago. So definitely go and check those out. So those are all my intros and outros. So the next order of business, the second question has to deal with ideal album length. So, you know, now I can say this right now, honestly. There's no such thing as a perfect ideal track listing length. Only you can decide that, and anybody can decide that. So for some people it might be 10 tracks, it might be 15 tracks to another person, it might be 10 tracks. Some people may even like a dope double disc album. And I'll tell you what, two of my favorite records right now out of the last decade is Reconstruction by Chino XL and The Psychic World of Walter Reed by by Killer Priest, and that one had 41 tracks. Reconstruction, the Black Rosary, had 35 tracks. Those both were really dope. I could listen to them all day, no matter what. So, but as far as solo records go, when it comes to a real solo record, you really haven't established your name yet. I would recommend doing about 12 to 16 tracks. Now, if you have a few features on it, I would extend it to about 12 to 16. So, having like 11 or 12 on your own and then about 4 or 5 tracks with features. Some people, have misconceptions about solo albums. I've seen a lot of people, they release records. Even myself, I've done this before, where you release a record, you call it a solo album, but you have a ton of features on it. And so, with that being said, that should be more of a compilation album. So if you're going to do a compilation album, it'd probably be like 21 tracks, but it can really get long and boring for people. So I would recommend doing it about 12 to 16 tracks max. And you can extend it to 18 tracks, but what I would do is like throw in some interludes, maybe an intro, maybe an outro, maybe something creative that no one's ever done before. So you can implement those ideas within your style or the taste that you're looking for when you're in your album creating process. If you have real short tracks, I would recommend that you have more tracks, maybe out of the 12 to 16 range if they're really short tracks. There's albums that I've heard that I was like, oh, I wish there was more than this. Oh, I wish there was more than this. So definitely, I would say between 12 and 16 at the end of the day, especially for a solo artist. Now, in my opinion, I would never do a double disc album unless I was like a really established artist. I'm talking someone like Nas or Immortal Technique or Eminem or just like recently Chino XL, Killer Priest, maybe even someone from like Wu-Tang Clan, etc., etc. So for that question, I would say 12 to 16 tracks max. You can throw an intro and outro in there, maybe some interludes, but I would have at least 11 to 12 tracks with just you solo if you're doing a solo album. And at least 3 to 4 more of those tracks for doing features. That way you fit it into 16. That way you get a good amount. You get your features, but you also get a good amount of solo tracks. That way people have more of an attention span to listen to you rather than just listen to all these tracks, that can go on so long and forever. And I know what that's like because my last album, or my first album, should I say, had 21 tracks, or technically 22 if you get it digitally. So with that being said, that's what I think about an ideal album length. Last but not least, albums I would change lengthwise or modify or make better. This was the hardest question for me because I've listened to so many records, and there's some records where they stand out to me. There's some records that don't. I might only like a few tracks, and there's some albums I just don't even care for, and that aren't my style at all. And so, respectively, I picked 2 albums, one that just came out recently, and then one that is in my top 25. And I'm going to talk about the one that was in my top 25. And that album, I'd really have to go back and listen to it as to like why I picked it, because I was trying to listen to it the other day, but I guess it's just not available, and so I may have to go and get a hard copy of it. But one of my favorite albums of all time was As the World Burns by Arsonists. It was like 19 tracks long. What I would have done was just taken the unnecessary like 6 or 7 tracks that might have been in there. Now, of course, this is just an opinion. This isn't like a concrete fact, so just take this with a grain of salt. I really think that it should have been just like 12 or 13 tracks. Maybe cut out some things, or maybe, I can't remember. I know Q Unique did all the production for that, but I don't know if I know there were some really great tracks on there. I don't know. I can't remember if he produced it or not. But I think it's like Freestyle and like Jai's One or Destroy that was producing a few of the other tracks. But I really can't remember, honestly, but I would just cut about 6 or 8 tracks from that, and it would be, A-okay. And now I'm going to talk about one that just came out recently, and I have mad respect for the dude. I just felt my only concern with this album was just some of the beats. And of course, he's an awesome, top-notch lyricist. He's been in the game, for many years. He's been out, since Biggie was trying to start his career. So definitely a legend. let's see, and the album and the artist is let's see, R.A. the Rugged Man. The album is Legends Never Die. I would have cut about 4 or 5 of the tracks. What I would have done was taken the 2 bonus tracks that were on there. I would have put them on the actual album and omit about 4 or 5 of the tracks, maybe even 6, because you know, just wasn't really feeling some of the beats. But it was definitely a dope record. You know, I really like the Tech 9 joint. The intro was phenomenal as well. You know, you can add that to the favorite intros because I really like that beat. I thought it was cool. You know, how he just brought that 90s flavor with Buck Wild. C-Lance was on there. My homie Verbal was on there. There were some really good features on there. But at the same time, the only thing that really turned me off was some of the beats, and I just would omit it just because of that. So I would probably keep it about 13 to 15 tracks, or maybe even 13 to 16. We'll put it that way. So again, I don't really like to critique other people's art because everyone is entitled to their own creativity, but that's just how I felt about that. So okay, so now I've answered all those 3 questions. I just want to give a big shout out to Alex from the Underground Vault. If you do not know what the Underground Vault is, what they do is they take they like to do album reviews for all sorts of hip-hop artists, like on a wide spectrum. You know, you can go from like Aesop Rock all the way down to Jay-Z, all the way down to, you know, you name it. They like to review a bunch of people. They're open-minded about listening to stuff and giving it an honest review, and they're pretty accurate with it. So I recommend going to check their channel out. Again, thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to check all the links down below. I'll also leave the Underground Vaults link down below in the description so that you could go check out their channel. And you can also go and check out my album, Quantum Chaotica. They also did a review for that as well, which I really appreciate. I'd say it was a pretty accurate review. So, again, thank you all. I hope you enjoyed this. Apologies if I did ramble on. I tried to format this as best as I could. So, again, hope you all have a great night. I will see you all, and take care.